이번에 리뷰할 다큐는 2014년에 PBS사에서 제작한 Your Inner Fish라는 다큐입니다. PBS는 우리나라 EBS랑 그 비슷한 그 교육방송이죠, 미국에. 거기서 제작한 건데, 이제 요게 An Evolution Story죠. 진화의 이야기인데, 이게 3부작으로 제작이 된 겁니다. 그 중에서 일부가 Your Inner Fish입니다. 우리 안의 물고기라는 거죠. 그리고 2부는 Your Inner Reptile입니다. 우리 안의 파충류. 그리고 3부는 Your Inner Monkey. 우리 안의 원숭이. 그러니까 우리 몸 안에 물고기나 파충류나 원숭이 흔적이 다 있다. 이런 얘기죠. 그래서 진화를 했기 때문에 그런 얘기인데, 그러니까 닐 슈빈이라는 시커드 교수예요. 어류 고생물 학자로서 인체의 기원을 밝힌다. 이거를 보면 인간의 몸을 보는 시각이 이제 달라질 거다. 그런 얘기죠. 다른 생물이 인간을 이해하는데 길잡이가 되는 경우가 많다는 거죠. 곳곳에서 찾은 고생물이 뼈 안에, 그리고 인간의 DNA 안에 놀라운 얘기가 숨어 있다는 거죠. 우리의 목과 폐, 팔다리에 개척자의 흔적이 있다는 거예요. 물고기와 인간의 유사성이 보인다. 물고기는 인류의 친척이다. 물고기는 뼈대를 지닌 최초의 생물이다. 전부 다 뼈대 있는 집안이죠.
Now, prepare to travel back in time, through the distant branches of our family tree. We'll meet a strange cast of characters. The ancestors that shaped your body. The family you never knew you had. Fossils unearthed around the world reveal that fish are the first creatures with bony skeletons. They have backbones and skulls, just like you and me. This shared anatomy connects us to fish and to a long line of other animals. To see what I mean, imagine the complete history of life on a giant family tree, from the first microscopic organisms billions of years ago to all animals alive today. Our history lies on one branch of this tree of life, and swimming in oceans and streams. 40 million years later, the first amphibians appear on land. Then we see reptiles, followed by the first mammals around 200 million years ago. And much later, we arrive at our special branch, primates. This history tells us something remarkable. Every reptile, bird, and mammal alive today is descended from ancient fish. And that includes
생물이, 닐 슈빈 교수가 주목한 게 뭐냐면 생물이 물에서 무트로 올라온 사건에 주목을 한 거예요. 그러면 물속에 있다가 무트로 올라오려면 지느러미 갖고는 안 되죠. 육지에 올라오려면 지느러미가 몸을 지탱할 수 있는 다리로 변화되어야 한다. 그 지느러미가 다리로 변하면서 사지류가 발생하게 된 거죠. 다른 생물의 골격 구조는 인간의 골격 구조와 비슷하다. 이게 이제 그 물고기에서 육지로 이제 올라오는 걸 이렇게 그린 건데, 옛날에 물속에 있을 때는 이렇게 앞이 동그랬다는 거예요. 앞에서 보면 동그랬는데 이게 육지로 올라오면서 이게 납작해졌다는 거죠. 앞에서 보면 이게 납작해졌다는 거예요. 악어처럼. 그래가지고 앞발이 먼저 이제 발달이 하기 시작하는 거죠. 이제 앞발 갖고는 이제 부족하니까 뒷다리가 이제 발달하게 되는 거죠. 이렇게 해서 완전히 육지로 올라오게 되었다. 이런 얘기예요. 이 보면은 이렇게 지느러미랑 다리를 이렇게 비교해 보면은 모양은 다 틀리죠. 모양은 다 틀린데 구조는 똑같다는 얘기예요. 그러니까 이렇게 보면은 원본이라고 그러죠. 처음에 뼈 하나인데 그 다음에 투본이라고 그러죠. 투본. 뼈가 두 개예요. 두 개고 그 다음에 여러 개 뼈고, 거기서 손가락이나 발가락 이렇게 가지처럼 뻗어나갔다는 얘기죠. 원본, 투본, 여러 개의 뼈, 그 다음에 뭐 발가락 같은 거. 그러니까 모양은 다 틀린데 기본 구조는 다 똑같다는 거예요. 하나의 뼈, 두 개의 뼈, 여러 개의 뼈, 그리고 발가락 이런 식으로. 이게 전부 이렇게 됐다는 얘기예요. 이게 모든 생명체가 하나의 뼈, 두 개의 뼈, 여러 개의 뼈, 그리고 발가락. 여기서 이 공통적인 패턴이 이렇게 나타난다는 거죠. 150년 전 과학자들은 인간의 손과 네발 달린 짐승의 사지와의 연관관계를 알고자 했다. 해부학자였던 리차드 오웬에게 사람들이 새롭고 개팍한 생명체의 분석을 의뢰했을 때 그는 공통적인 패턴이 있음을 발견했다. 하지만 공통적인 패턴이 왜 나타나는지는 알지 못했다. 다윈은 모든 생물의 공통구조가 나타나는 이유는 과거 어디에선가 공통조상에게서 분화되었기 때문이라고 보았다. 그러니까 다윈이 이제 제대로 해석을 한 거죠.
And so people were coming back to London with new and oddball creatures for him to analyze. And in analyzing all the different creatures, he found common patterns. Although the overall shape and structure of each limb was very different, he started to see that there was an underlying theme. It was as if the same set of bones was being squashed or extended to perform different functions. Here's a dog. Dogs, run and jump. What do you have? One bone, two bones, little bones, and then the digits, the equivalents of the fingers or toes. And, of course, here's a bird. Its limb has been modified into a wing, and it has one bone, two bones, lots of bones, and then digits. The amazing fact is, in each of these creatures, the skeletal architecture is largely the same as ours. According to Darwin, we should be able to trace the evolution of our limbs and hands by going back in time down our family tree. Starting with our primate ancestors, we see hands and limbs that look very similar to our own. Go back a bit further to the first mammals, and we find deeper similarities in the paws. And we see how paws emerged from more distant relatives. And if we go back even further, we reach our most distant four-legged ancestors. These animals, the earliest tetrapods, were among the first to have Owen's one bone, two bones, lots of bones pattern. But when we enter the underwater world, around 400 million years ago, instead of animals with limbs, we find prehistoric fish with fins. And that brings us to a great mystery of biology. How did we get from fish with fins to animals with arms and legs? Darwin boldly predicted that there must have been ancient animals, transitional forms, that bridged this gap. But what would such an animal look like? Would it have limbs, or fins, or both? Such a creature reflects a critical step in the origin of the human hand. I set out to find one.
북미 대륙에서 물고기가 육지로 올라왔을 가능성이 높은 대봉기의 퇴적층은 세 군데 있는데 펜실베니아, 그린랜드, 캐나다 북부 지역이다. 펜실베니아에서는 견갑대를 발굴했고 그린랜드에서는 이그티어스테가를 발굴했으며 캐나다 북부 지역은 아직 조사하지 않았다.
Whole new kind of animal. And although we only have a shoulder girdle, it's actually a very informative part of the skeleton. It would be on the left side, the skull would go off in that direction, and the animal itself would be about 1 meter long. And just from the shoulder girdle, we can learn things about how it may have held that limb. And of course, it does compare to other animals that are similar from other parts of the world, and we can use those to learn other aspects of Hynerpeton.
These early four-legged animals belong to a group I like to call the stegas.
Ichthyostega's forelimbs could push the top half of the body off the ground, but the back end has got these paddle-like hind limbs, which are useful in water for swimming with, but on land act as stabilizers to stop the thing toppling over.
The anatomy of the bones suggested that this four-legged animal had just come onto land. It was right at the edge of our search. But between these tetrapods and ancient fish, there was still a gap spanning millions of years. If we could find an animal within that gap, we'd be filling in a crucial piece of evolutionary history. We had a college textbook. You're just thumbing through the diagrams in the book, and boom, there was this figure that changed our lives.
There's the map.
It was a map of North America, which highlighted 3 areas of Devonian rock of just the right type to hold fossil fish moving onto land. There were our Red Hill rocks in Pennsylvania.
Been there, done that. Worked on those very rocks.
Then there were rocks in Greenland, which Jenny Clack had already searched.
But it's that little.
Finally, there was this strip across northern Canada. And these rocks
stacked one on top of the other. But that's not how it was in the past. These valleys have been carved by glaciers that have moved back and forth. And those red and green rocks actually at one point extended across the valley. And they were straight, they weren't tilted. Now look inside the rocks, and what those rocks tell us, that this valley 375 million years ago was a giant floodplain. And that floodplain was filled with rivers that swelled their banks and sometimes shrunk, but in those conditions formed swamps and streams of all different sizes. And inside those streams was diverse life.
Somewhere out there, we were hoping to find an intrepid fish on the brink of the historic transition to life on land.
When I wasn't looking for fossils in the summers, I'd spend my time looking under a microscope at embryos. And I was watching, at the time, bodies forming from egg to adult. And there's an incredible beauty to that process.
In the early stages of development, all animals start as a single cell. They divide again and again until gradually a body emerges, with a front, a back, a top, and a bottom.
It became very clear early on in the process some of the most important embryos were fish. Because fish have the basic body plan in their embryos that was to become our own bodies.
If you see an early fish embryo and a human embryo side by side, you'll see something remarkable. They look almost identical. We really do look like fish. Both embryos have a head, a body, a tail, and many other similar features.
And one of those similarities exists in the neck, or what's called the pharyngeal area.
In both fish and people, what you find are a series of swellings called gill arches.
Turns out that in fish, those swellings become components of the gill apparatus. In people, they become portions of our lower jaw, portions in our middle ear, part of our voice box.
물고기나 닭이나 인간의 배아를 보면 유사함을 알 수 있다. 닭을 연구한 결과 소닉 해지오라는 유전자가 다리를 만들어내는 것을 알아냈다. 이 유전자는 홍어에도 있는데 지느러미를 만들어내는 유전자이다. 그러니까 소닉 해지오라는 유전자가 물고기에서는 지느러미를 만들고 이 육지동물한테는 사지를 만들어내는데 관여하고 있다는 얘기예요. 같은 거란 얘기예요. 그러니까 결국은 그게 물고기에서 시작을 해가지고 육지동물까지 이렇게 이어졌다. 그런 얘기죠.
If you take a chick egg and cut a hole in the shell and throw it away, you can see the embryo floating on top of the yolk. It's right there, it's accessible. You can start to probe what's important for it to form by removing little bits and saying, does that disrupt the process? Or by moving tissue from one place to another and saying, what does that do?
Cliff was following a long line of scientists using chickens to investigate how limbs develop. In the 1950s, John Saunders was one such scientist. Saunders and his team experimented on chick embryos just a few days old. They focused on little protrusions called limb buds, from which the wings would eventually emerge. In one experiment, Saunders took a small patch of cells from one side of a bud and transplanted it to the opposite side to see what would happen. When he came back a week later, much to his surprise, he found that the chick embryo had grown a second set of digits, one a mirror image of the other. That tiny patch of cells was clearly special. Somehow, it was telling the digits where to form.
The way that we now think of it is that those cells instruct the rest of the limb by making a long-range signal, a beacon that they send out that the other cells see and respond to.
The identity of that signal was a great mystery that went unsolved for decades. But Cliff had a hunch. He and some colleagues suspected that the signal might be a single molecule that came from a single gene. After months of searching, they found it. Then, remarkably, they discovered the gene was active in exactly the same patch of cells identified by Saunders. They dubbed this new gene Sonic Hedgehog, after the video game character. So did Sonic Hedgehog produce the mysterious signal everyone wanted to find?
Ultimately, we wanted to know whether this gene that we discovered, Sonic Hedgehog, really is the key signal for making the array of digits in the hand.
In a groundbreaking experiment, Cliff and his team added a bead containing pure Sonic Hedgehog to the wrong side of the growing limb bud, echoing Saunders' experiments. When he returned a week later, he found his chick had two sets of digits just like Saunders' chick. This was a major discovery. Sonic Hedgehog, a single gene, was the source of the signal responsible for generating the pattern of the digits.
And that really nails it. It really meant that we had the linchpin in our hands and could start looking at how that process worked in detail.
Can I count your fingers? Let me see. I can count. I went to school too.
1,
2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is special. Look at that hand.
Kamani was born with an extra digit on each hand and foot.
Squeeze my finger. What you have is a paddle, a big, broad paddle.
Just as in the chicken limb, Sonic Hedgehog sends out a signal to shape the pattern of our digits. When it's strong, a pinky forms. And as it weakens, one by one, different fingers are made until we end up with 5. If we turn down Sonic Hedgehog, fewer fingers are made. But if we were to increase the effect of Sonic Hedgehog, we would get extra fingers, like Kamani's.
It is really quite beautiful that something as simple as a single signal moving through the limb could have such profound and differential effects on the.
I guess the thing that struck me the most when I first opened a skate egg was how shockingly similar that embryo looks to a chicken embryo, a mouse embryo, a human embryo. As an embryologist, I should have understood, of course they're going to look similar, but still when you see that, you're thinking, there's 400 million years of evolution that separates me from that embryo, and at one stage in my life, that was exactly what I looked like.
It's clear we have a shared genetic history with fish. But do the genes that shape our hands also shape these skate fins? To find out, Randy manipulated the skate embryos like Cliff had done with the chick embryos. He put a bead containing the Sonic Hedgehog molecule on the opposite side of a growing fin bud.
And it turns out that Sonic Hedgehog was sufficient to cause a mirror image duplication, a second fin to form in this skate.
This is exactly what Sonic Hedgehog had done in Cliff's chickens.
We were absolutely stunned, and you have to remember that this is a skate embryo, and what that tells us is that these very basic patterning mechanisms are performing the exact same functions in the skate, in the shark, in the chicken, in the mouse, all the way up to humans.
사지류에 암석이 있을 만한 곳은 대봉기 퇴적층인데 북미 지역에 대봉계 암석이 있는 지층으로 펜실베니아, 그린란드, 캐나다 북부 지역 세 군데가 표시되어 있었다. 이제 그 중에서 대봉계 지층이 퇴적된 지역을 꼭 찍어가지고 화석을 발굴을 하는 거죠. 그러니까 지금은 지질학도 워낙에 발달해가지고 어느 시대에 퇴적된 건지 그 퇴적층을 알고 있다는 얘기죠. 그 여기 대충 보면은 원생대랑 고생대, 중생대, 신생대가 있잖아요. 물론 맨 앞에 시생대도 있지만 그 여기 삼kam브리아기, 캄브리아기, 오르도비스기, 대봉기, 페른기, 트라이아스기, 주라기, 백악기 이렇게 쭉 돼 있잖아요. 이 주라기는 뭐 워낙 유명하죠. 공룡 그 영화가 있어가지고. 그런데 이 어류가 대봉기 때 번성을 했다는 얘기죠. 대봉기 때 어류가 나타나가지고 이때 번성을 했는데 그 다음에 페른기에 넘어가면 이제 양서류가 번성을 하는 거죠. 그 양서류는 양쪽에 산다는 얘기잖아요. 물에도 살고 육지에도 살고. 그러면은 이때 페른기 때 번성을 했으면 그 이전에 대봉기 말에 이 최초의 육지로 올라온 생명체가 있었을 것이다 이거죠. 그래서 대봉기에 퇴적된 그 암석을 그걸 조사하는 거예요. 그 퇴적층 속에 암석 속에 뭔가 화석이 있지 않겠냐. 그래서 보니까 북미 지역은 펜실베니아, 그린란드, 캐나다 북부 지역 세 군데가 표시되어 있더라 이거죠. 그래서 펜실베니아를 조사를 먼저 했고 그 다음에 그린란드는 다른 학자가 조사한 게 있습니다. 그 다음에 캐나다 북부 지역은 조사가 안 돼 있는데 이 캐나다 북부 지역으로 간 거죠. 화석을 발굴하려고.
Steve says, "Hey guys, what's this?" Ted and I go running over, and what we saw was this V here. It was covered with rock. And as soon as we saw this V, and we saw these teeth under it, it became very clear that this little V we're seeing is the tip of a snout, and that this was a snout of a flat-headed fish.
We stopped in our tracks. A flat head was a likely sign of a transitional fish.
Here was the snout of exactly the creature we were looking for, and it was sticking out of the rock. So if we had any luck whatsoever, the rest of the creature would be, encased in the rock.
So we dug all the way around the fossil, leaving a chunk of rock that we then encased in plaster.
Okay, we get home. We knew we had a flat-headed fish, but how much of it did we have? Well, then the preparators had to take over. They removed the plaster jackets, and the first thing they did was to etchate the rock, exposing the front part of the snout. Then about a month and a half goes by, and they start to find the orbits, the eye holes. And then we see the shoulder, and then we see the fins, and then we see more and more and more and more until we see pretty much the entire top side of the body. What's really wonderful about this specimen is that we have the head connected to a body, and the body is connected to the fins. So we know that this fin comes from this animal, and we know its size and how it fits together.
Later, we found parts of other specimens, and some of these were really big, up to 9 feet long. The local Inuit people named our fossil Tiktaalik, which means large freshwater fish. And as we took stock of our discovery, the real excitement began. Here was an animal Darwin had predicted, a real anatomical mixture. It had some features of fish, like scales and fins and gills. It also had lungs for breathing air. And, to our astonishment, it had a neck, the earliest one like ours ever found. But inside the fins lie the clincher. We see an early version of Owen's 1 bone, 2 bones, lots of bones pattern that we see in our own limbs today. It even had a kind of wrist, the first signs of a link to the human hand. Every time you flex your wrist or shake your head, you can thank Tiktaalik and its Devonian cousins adapting to life in these ancient streams. Unlike other fish, Tiktaalik could use its neck to watch out for predators. and to hunt smaller prey. And because those fins were strong enough to lift its body out of the water, a whole new frontier opened. Over millions of years, the two pairs of fins in fish like Tiktaalik would lead to the two pairs of limbs in every bony animal on Earth. It's a powerful legacy we can see in our own arms and legs today.